All right, so today we're starting strand 5, which is physical development. So the goal for this entire unit is for you to be able to explore the biological and physical growth of children. So we're going to start with standard 5.1, which talks about brain growth. So for this standard, you should be able to identify the physical stages of brain growth. Here's your essential question. You should be able to explain the phrase cells that fire together, wire together, and explain how fine and gross motor skills are connected to this. So go ahead and pause and then write that down as you go throughout the notes today. Then come back when you're ready. All right. So some things to know is prenatal. This is the formation of the nervous system begins within days of conception as networks of neural connections before most women know that they are pregnant. So the brain's actually working and those connections are being made before most females even know that they're pregnant. At birth, the brain is 25% of adult weight and volume. So it's about a quarter of the weight that adults' brains are and takes up about a quarter of as much volume, so as much space. Okay. The sensory region develops first, and then followed by the motor regions, and then the higher cognitive functions. During the first year, the brain doubles in size up to 75% weight and volume. And then from ages 2 to 6, the brain increases to 90% of adult weight, but this does not mean that their brains are 90% finished developing. It just means that they're now about the same size as in adults. Okay. And then between 4 and 5-year-olds, something to know is that 4 and 5-year-olds can only sometimes control their impulses. So a lot of times they can't control what's going on, like what their first instinct is. Electrical impulses begin to travel faster and faster, but children's brains still tend to process experiences slower than adults' brains. That's some things to be aware of when it comes to cognitive. All right, so here is a chart that kind of explains a little bit more about cognitive development and brain growth. So at birth, the brain has 200 billion brain cells. The brain grows 1.7 grams a day during the baby's first year. 60% of an infant's energy intake from food is used for brain growth. By age 1, infants typically understand 70 words but speak only a handful of them. Between 1 and 2 years, communication across different regions of the brain occurs most rapidly. At this age, toddlers become increasingly independent and interested in new things. At 18 months, a toddler's spoken vocabulary starts to explode. They add one new word every 2 waking hours, which is crazy. Like if you were learning a new language, that would be like every hour that you were in class or that you spent learning a new word or just being awake, you would add one new vocabulary word to your vocabulary, like the words you know. By age 2, the brain has the overall appearance and structure of an adult brain. They have more than 100 trillion cell connections. And then they have usually about a 300 word vocabulary. So, there we go. All right. So, all right, give me 1 second. So, okay. Brain development is a result of biology and experiences. Cells that fire together wire together. This means that the more often a certain neural pathway is stimulated, the stronger that neural pathway becomes. So neural pathways are how we learn things. So things that fire together wire together. So the more we think about something, or the more we do something and that pathway is stimulated, the stronger it becomes and the more often we are to go to that pathway. So when we learn something new and we're practicing what we have learned, we're creating synaptic connections. All right. Oops. I did not mean to do that. Okay. So let's talk about plasticity and sensitive periods. So just as plastic can be molded, brain networks can be changed. Some networks can be more easily changed or more easily changed during specific periods of development. Life experiences such as consistent relationships or learning something new and practicing what we've learned, we're shaping how the neurons in our brain connect and communicate. So even though we may not remember experiences that happened very early in life, these experiences may still have a profound influence on the architecture of the brain and how young children experience and respond to future experiences. So now I'm going to have you watch this video that talks about sensitive periods in early brain development.
Why is early child development important? The overarching answer is because it is a determining influence on subsequent life chances and health. But why is that? The principal reason is to be found in the fact that in the early years of life, there are a wide range of very key milestones or sensitive periods in brain and biological development. As I'm speaking, this slide is scrolling out, showing some of the early elements of brain development that occur before children reach school age, which is in the dark gray portion of the slide, showing that by the time kids reach school age, a huge amount has taken place in terms of their opportunities to develop basic competencies that will code for success in later years. For instance, their visual systems are connecting to the deep structures in the brain that are associated with emotional control. That means that children who have a consistent set of human faces that they see early on in life, going through a wide range of emotions, develop the neurobiological ability to decode emotion and to develop a sense of belonging. Those children who are neglected or grow up in environments which are violent or emotionally barren, develop a completely different style of coping early on in life and a different set of biological connections which do not work so well adaptively later on. Similarly, in the early years, children's ability to understand language and to express themselves in language goes up as a straight dose response with the richness and the responsiveness of the language environment that they grow up in. So that by the time children reach school age, those that have grown up in rich and responsive language environments are ready to understand the instructions that come from the teacher, ready to respond and describe their experience and learn. Whereas children that have grown up in environments where there's been very little language have huge difficulties decoding sentences of 10, 15, 20 words of length, of understanding what it means to respond to a question, of understanding what it means to give their experience or give their ideas as though they were some sort of expert. Similarly, children early on in life who start off being physically aggressive in situations of social conflict, if by the time they reach school age they've not had the socializing experiences to reduce and eliminate and transform these physically aggressive responses into verbal communication skills, those children are at a high risk of going on to labeling and grade failure as time goes on. So in all dimensions, physical, social, emotional, language, and cognitive development, the early years are crucial for health, well-being, learning, and behavior thereafter. This slide shows that the idea that early life has an influence across the rest of the life course is not just rhetoric. We know from studies following children from the time of birth onward that by the second decade of life, early experiences and early development are influencing school failure, teen pregnancy, and the risk of early criminality. By the third and fourth decade of life, they are influencing the risk of obesity, elevated blood pressure, and mental health problems such as depression. By the fifth and sixth decades of life, they're influencing chronic coronary heart disease, diabetes, and other chronic diseases. And by old age, influencing premature aging and memory loss. So it is true that the early years influence health, well-being, learning, and behavior across the entire life course.
All right, so that's the end of this video. Make sure you go back and you answer the essential question in your notes. So hopefully you can be able to tell me why cells that fire together wire together, what that means, and how that can help a child. So we're going to end this one here, and then I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.